Eva. Thanks for having me. Roger, is that your title?
What?
Is that your title for the session? That's Heather's. Anyway. Right.
Because nobody would have checked it, because I would have done it the last minute.
Right. So,
Nice shirt, Tom.
thank you very much. really dressed up today. So, Roger and Heather asked me to come and talk a bit about kind of what we've been doing in general terms of cloud production. And I think one of the first topics is we talk about it a lot of times as cloud production. The reality is it's really virtualized production, and kind of like you and Slide were saying earlier, it's software. So it's software DSP, software processing, running in public cloud or on-prem cloud on a computer at the end of the day. There really is not that much difference in terms of the technology. Where there probably are differences is in terms of the actual applications that gets used in. So it's probably fair to say that our US customers are a little bit more gung-ho about public cloud deployment at this point. That's kind of where the majority of our kind of public cloud trials and clients and customers using this are based. And a lot of that is the kind of remote production model. So kind of traditional remote production model, but taken into a distributed way using usually AWS. A lot of that is disaster recovery, like the idea of you can't get into your facility, you can't get in, can you run something where the building's locked or just from anywhere in the world? And that, again, that additional production capacity. So I've got 5 rooms, I do 5 shows on a weekend, but this one weekend there are 10 things. I need to run this in an office room or maybe from someone's garage or from their home, that kind of stuff. There is obviously also the on-prem side, which is a bit more permanent, a bit more like the traditional, but running as software as opposed to like bespoke DSP hardware. So having said it's US, I then give a UK example. So this is kind of really just there. It's an example covering SVG, but it's really to give the sense of this is part of a bigger picture. The audio processing on its own is part of it, but obviously it sits alongside all of these different other elements, video like replay machines, kind of video switching, audio clip playing, all of those other bits of kit you buy to build a broadcast facility. So you need all of that to do this. And most of the time, if I can flick, we'll sit alongside a kind of video platform, if you like. So here are 3 examples, there are others, but usually the audio, and when we're dealing with ours, it's usually what we call breakaway audio, so leaving that system to come out and be part of the mixing engine and deal that, but we're sitting alongside these systems. So it's not in isolation. Okay. So that particular application, we're talking about remote production. And there's been this kind of drive for distributed production and things run at different locations. And I think I've shown this slide to probably most people in this room before in some way, shape or form. And a lot of that is about you've got a venue, you've got a public cloud provider, for this case in Virginia or thereabouts, and in this case a control room in Connecticut. And that was set up like that. In this case, I think I've said this before, there was 13 milliseconds of latency between where AWS was and the control room in Virginia, in Connecticut. So it was very like usable operationally as a mix engineer. Obviously everyone has concern about latency when you're talking about cloud and public cloud. This was one of those situations where we proved that it was actually perfectly possible to do it. And then the advantage is that you can move things around. So suddenly if the event that's happening moves to the West Coast, the operational experience is identical. There, when they press a button, the difference in time between when something happens is the same, because the processing engine stayed in the same place, their control stayed in the same place. Yes, the event and the venue moved, but their experience as an operator was the same thing. So this becomes about moving things around. Let's say the operator wanted to move around in this situation, and that, be at home, or perhaps they're doing something some hours a day on one side of the country or one side of a continent, and then move that somewhere else. So you need to start to be able to move things And that means you need to be able to turn things on and off. You need to be able to do the parts in AWS very quickly from not existing to existing. So, when you're installing something on the ground, you are physically installing something. You are like configuring it, setting it up to go with the I/O, connecting physical things. You are building your show file. You're building what your mixer is set up, your channels, your buses, how things are routed, how things are EQ'd, etc. And then you're mixing. And you do that. And in a fixed facility, you do that. And a lot of that is commissioning or whatever you call it. It's something that takes time. You set that up. There are equivalents in a software environment. These are installing software, installing the engine, configuring it, connecting the I/O, again building a show file and doing your mix. So you have to do all of this stuff anyway in software. The key is doing it in an automated way. So doing that in a repeatable way where you can hit a button and those things happen all together. So there are some key kind of steps to do that. And if you refer back to the point where I was talking about it's the entire system, you have to go and get all of those pieces to operate in this way to build this system that you can deploy and move around to get those benefits of the scalability and the kind of flexibility that were at the beginning. So, AWS as an example, you've got to deploy instances. You've got to put those computers in that virtual rack. Think of it that way. You can use scripting to do that. CloudFormation, Terraform, lots of things, lots of tools available. You've then got to install stuff. And the most important thing there is that it's unattended. So think about when you install software, often you get a button to click OK. If you want this to happen without a human interacting, all of that has to happen without clicking that button that says OK. It's a simple thing. It's something you need to check. All of those pieces of the puzzle will do. You've again got to do that configuration. All that stuff you spend time setting up, all that programming you do in a hardware environment, you need to make sure that can either be done by files or by APIs. So you need that part of the system's work too. Then we get into the user config. So I need to copy my mix, my show, my kind of show file configuration from wherever it happens to be into that system to get it up and running. So that was my last slide. So I'm even short, Heather. There you go. Thank you very much. He's going to ask me a question.
So talk about your broadcast customer in Connecticut who is in NBC.
Yeah.
They're very interested in distributed production.
Correct.
And long term, they see that as highly scalable. But
Yep.
they want to scale it long term. They do a lot of shows. A lot of that is driven, and not just on the audio side, but by the operators. Talk about it from a staffing perspective, where they're going with this in terms of travel.
It's the similar to remote production, is that not wanting to travel and keeping it all based so they can do multiple shows, like 2 hours of one show, switch to another show, 2 hours, and keep there. And they want to do that both from the facility, so from the actual control rooms that are used, from rooms that aren't traditional control rooms, but also there is a want for people to be able to do that from home. So that is the motivation, and kind of to be able to do that from anywhere across the country, not be stuck with the same people in the same geographical location.
Of the feasibility of supporting that, of somebody mixing from their basement.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think you are on that?
You can do it. You probably want to only do stereo, maybe 5.1. It starts to get a bit more complicated just on the practicalities of everything else above that in the immersive sense. But you could do it today. You would not have, obviously, you would not have as good a listening environment as in the actual control room. Unless you happen to have that. Yeah, but just from a pure technology point of view, you could do that today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.